Welcome to the 13th regular meeting of RSC 252. Alex Cutter, pledge allegiance, please, sir.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome and thank you, folks, for coming. Tonight, our main excitement is going to be the budget. We get the budget presented. But we have a few things to get to before that. First of all, act on minutes of the 12th regular meeting. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, changes you'd like to make? Anthony.
Item 11.5, I made a motion to postpone the vote until tonight so that we could actually take that vote in front of the cameras, and there's no mention of the raise.
Okay. So we will.
Did it get a second? Because typically
It didn't get a second.
We don't put a motion in there if it doesn't get a second. Like that's the.
Okay.
That's
Well,
what
we've
we've always
acknowledged
done.
it, but okay. Because it didn't get a second.
If it doesn't get a second, we don't. It doesn't. Nothing. It's like
Something
nothing
we can,
happened.
yeah, okay. And there is no mention of the raise amount in there at this time.
Nope. Contract.
Okay. All right, so I don't know if there's anything to change, like we're bringing it forward, but I don't know if anything,
You don't think we should put the amount of the raise in there?
well, do we do that normally? Well, I'm trying to think what our past practice is.
So we have done that when that's been the only thing, but in this case there were a couple things. So.
Well, I think we'll bring it back, because I think you're right, we should add the full, let's put all the information about because the contract, we have certified the contract, we voted on the contract, so we might as well put the changes there in the minutes moving forward, which is the raise, which was 3%, I believe.
3%, correct.
Yeah. And then the other couple changes which are escaping me right this minute.
I don't know if we've put other changes, but I can go back and look.
Okay, so we'll postpone the minutes till the next meeting. After that is fixed. Thank you, Anthony. All right, that takes us to report of the board chair. All right, like I promised you folks in an email, this is going to be slightly longer. I'm trying to figure out best ways to make this work, and there's a lot of questions and debate, but we'll see what we go. The general, how we put together agendas basically falls to the superintendent, then with my input. So the two of us finalize agenda items. I do very much feel strongly that everybody, if you have something you'd like to put on the agenda, has the option to have that added if it is something that the whole board or a majority or a portion of the board feel is something we want to address. That being said, we don't have it very often. We did happen to have, Anthony did bring forward a request currently to, he would like to have an agenda item added in regards to how, and Anthony, please correct me if I'm off here a little bit, but primarily the behind it is a review of how IJJ is currently being implemented. It's specifically related to a balance of books into our public, with our purchases and making our libraries more balanced. Clearly, I think that basically summarizes what you're looking for. The discussion will of course go a lot longer than that, but if we bring it forward, but I think it was primarily that. And please speak.
Sure. Yeah, it'll be 2 years this spring that we adopted the policy. There have been some. I've raised concerns about the books that have come in a couple of times since then, and it appears as though there could be an imbalance in terms of viewpoint in the collections, such that I think it's right. The time is right for the board to look at exactly how the various points in the policy are being followed, one of which is assessing the collection before new books are purchased for it. One would wonder why some of the books were purchased given the collection that already exists. So to make certain that those questions are asked in the future so that we can balance the collection as quickly as possible, if that imbalance actually exists. I think the board needs to look into it.
So Anthony would like to, it falls to the chair primarily, but I'm open. Is there an overall feeling from board members that they would like to look into this? Is anybody, clearly we're going to be evaluating as we move forward. I agree with Anthony. I do very much strongly, I personally believe that our libraries are not fairly, are not as balanced as I think they should be, but I'm not sure this is the time to go evaluate it with a new librarian. But I'm open to what is the thoughts. Anybody have any other thoughts on this? Alex?
I mean, I think it'd be where it's a fairly new policy and, the practice is one that we had come to an agreement on as a board. I think it makes sense to check in, I guess, on what exactly the steps are that's being taken.
Bree?
I guess I just want to make sure we're clear with like what is going on right this exact second.
We're not making any
Correct.
this conversation is falling under the normal conversations we have during reports.
So you just are looking for
I'm looking for feedback,
Should we
I'm
put it
looking for
on the
discussion.
agenda?
Yeah, we're no votes can come out of this unless we make a motion.
Right.
And no motion was made. I'm just looking for some feedback, and like we talked earlier, I don't want our discussions about how we operate to go behind the scenes, and I'm trying to figure out how to put that public-facing, those discussions, and fit it into Robert's rules, which is kind of a weird little fit, but we're gonna try to make it work. So anyways,
So
Bree, please
just
go
for clarification, we're not discussing whether we want to necessarily, like whatever discussion we want to have around policy IJJ, we're not discussing that right now. We're really just discussing whether we want to
Have
put
an
it onto
agenda
the
item
agenda
in the future.
in the near future. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
All right. Anybody else have any other thoughts? Yeah?
I don't think it's a high priority per se, so I wouldn't want it to bump other important business, but why not? Why not talk about it?
Okay. Either of you guys have any thoughts, or?
I, thank you for saying that, because I think that that's what was like in the back of my mind. It feels like we're heading into budget season, which takes us, I mean, literally to the end of the school year, like finalization and whatnot. If there's going to be changes, like if something comes out of that, like in the policy world, we've got 3 meetings left in my, I think for policy. I mean, I know more can be added. It's just, we're taking on wellness, which is gonna be huge, and it's a big meaty policy, and I think that that'll probably literally take us till the end of the year. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a high priority at this moment in time, not saying that it shouldn't be discussed though.
If a motion if I put it on the agenda, it'll be more a presentation on how it's currently being implemented, not necessarily,
Kicking
we're
it
not
back.
looking to kick it to
Okay, thank you.
policy.
Okay.
So, all
That's
right, basically heard from us, everybody. Jen, you have anything, are you good?
I agree. I think we need to do what we have, and it's something we can look at in the future.
Okay. Clearly, it's something that we definitely want to address. Portion of us definitely want to address it sooner than later. So it's something that probably not in the next couple meetings, but I probably will work with the superintendent. We'll have some sort of agenda item here before the end of the year to go over it. I'm not sure, when does the next purchase of books go out?
Are you saying you want to have the conversation before the next books are purchased?
No, I just was curious. That was more of a question.
Well, I mean, the report comes in December and June. Like,
Okay.
that's the policy, has me sharing it with you twice a year.
Yep.
So I usually wait until the end of the school year for when they're done purchasing. So,
But we'll definitely get something moving forward with it. So Karen and I will talk, and we'll get it on the agenda. But of course, we're gonna be fitting in all the budget stuff, and we'll see how the budget goes,
and negotiations.
and negotiations, of course, and everything. So yeah, so I have enough interest to put it on, but it's not gonna be in the next meeting. We have a couple of big issues coming up at the next meeting or two. So I mean, major time sucks. All right, that takes us to another item that I brought up. Basically, if I send an email, I was just gonna put it here so our little friendly owl can hear it. I'm not sure if anybody else heard it, but I heard it from enough people that I asked Carrie about it. Prom has some issues apparently. But my understanding is Evan is all over it and is moving in a positive fashion, so nothing, we can tell everybody things are good. That's what I'm
They're on
understanding. They're on it. I had some almost tearful people calling me that weren't really sure. I was like, really? Third thing we talked about, just so you folks know, because it's been so big and it's not on our agenda, we have had no new discussion, no new information, one way or the other on ACDC. We're all familiar, for those of you who don't familiar, that's our transgender policy moving forward. There's been nothing new legal or anything like that. I did have Anthony did pose a question. I just wanted to emphasize again, ACDC is currently solely athletically based. And when it comes to students using private spaces, it's basically we're following the Maine State
Maine Human Rights
Maine
Act.
Human Rights position on that, where we really don't have a lot of say. We can give some guidance, but we really don't have a lot of say on that. So we're basically, that's where we're at, our current ACDC policy. So saying that outright, we are solely an athletic policy. I know there's some question about that, but that is how I believe it is understood by at least the majority of the board. So moving forward, if there's any other questions or thoughts, but that's, Anthony asked for some clarification on that, and I've got you, I'm publicly clarifying where I believe the school district and how that's being enforced or enacted is that manner. So if a student, your specific question, I believe, was if, and I probably could look for the specific, but the gist of it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if a biological boy goes into a girl's bathroom, there's nothing we're doing about that. If that's how they perceive themselves, then that's what's happening. Our policy doesn't affect that at all. And so we're not enforcing any rules around that.
So you're saying that we are not following our own policy that tells the public that, and our staff, that we are committed to following Title IX as interpreted by a particular executive order. And even though it says that in the policy, we are not doing that. Because Title IX is all encompassing. It is not à la carte. You can't choose parts of it here and there. And so I just want to clarify that we have a policy that we are not following. Is that?
We're following the policy as I believe the definition is understood by, I believe, the majority of the board, if not all the board, with the exception of yourself. I believe that the policy clearly states that it's an athletic-only policy. The parts of the written policy I think you're referring to, in my opinion, basically just tell us where we're coming from, but doesn't say that we're supporting the Title IX presidential executive order. We're just saying that was given us leeway to go by the athletic only. So yes, we are only enacting, we're not following Title IX when it comes to the restrooms and changing rooms and so forth. Did one of you have a question? Are you good?
No, I had my hand
Yeah,
raised.
absolutely, yeah.
I was just wanted to highlight, I think there is a statement at the beginning of that policy that identifies that we are gonna be complying with the executive order specifically related to sports. I think there is a very explicit statement in the beginning of the policy that
Could you
says
read that for us? As
I don't have it
a
here.
point of information,
Yeah.
could we have that exact wording, please?
I don't know.
You have it open?
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be, actually, why don't, I would rather read it now. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this has an Otterbox on it. Oh, good Lord almighty, there we go. It is the policy of MSAD 52 Board of Directors to follow all state and federal laws applicable to schools based upon Executive Order 14168 signed, blah, 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 and statements made by the nation's highest law enforcement. The board understands the Title IX of the Education Amendments 1972 requires school to provide athletic opportunities separated by biological sex. biological male or biological female. The board believes to ensure safety, fairness, and equal opportunity in athletics, athletic teams shall be designated by sex in the following manner, and we list the sports. So I believe some of the confusion comes from the previous sentences where, based upon executive order 141, we're highlighting the order, but we're not following, we're not choosing to implement that whole, because we didn't choose as a district.
We're not choosing to follow the very first sentence of the policy.
It is the policy of MSAD 52 Board of Directors to follow all state and federal laws applicable to schools.
So Title IX is applicable to schools, yes?
Title IX and the Maine Human Rights Commission rules are all applicable to schools. We're trying to choose what's best for our students, which we're choosing at this time to only follow the athletic portion of that.
This says federal laws, not some federal laws. So I will respectfully suggest that this is a very poorly written policy.
And there is
It is
something.
ambiguous.
Yeah.
It is ambiguous. It is impossible
Thank
for
you.
our staff to follow this policy as it is written. It's absolutely impossible. You cannot follow this federal law and the state law at the same time. We say later in the policy, and I will read it, we say, the board is committed to bringing the district into compliance with Title IX as interpreted in the Executive Order 14168, signed on January 20th, 2025, while complying with the Maine Human Rights Act to the extent that it does not conflict with federal law. It does conflict with federal law, therefore we do not, this policy says we will not abide by the Maine Human Rights Act. We have set up a system of weird, mutually exclusive logic. We have to rewrite this. It is irresponsible for us to expect our staff to look at this and have any confidence that they can obey this policy.
Okay. Part of my mindset is I see it, you're number two, I got Jenny first then you, is that I think this is probably gonna come before the board in the near future. I'm thinking it's probably about one of the only ways we can truly clear it up and have it actually worded that it's no question at all, solely athletics. But anyways, Jenny?
So right now, I just want to make sure I understand, we're doing your report and we're not actually
We're
debating
just talking,
anything?
we're just having
okay.
discussion, trying to figure out how to move. I don't want to be a dictator. I can become one, but I don't want to be. I want to hear input from you folks as I move forward. That's all I'm trying to do. Bree?
Ditto.
Okay. So I'm hearing, and I do believe there's some serious greatness there. So probably we'll look at some method to bring it forward and modify the wording to actually have the words mean what the feeling of the board was at the time it was passed. Joe, what was it?
I just wanted to highlight that we've since had legal review, and there was no ambiguity about the conclusions of the legal review, and I'm not sure.
Again, it's something we'll have to look at, yeah.
If I could just point out that lawyers are wrong about 50% of the time.
Well,
You know,
very
with
much
the way
agree.
court decisions go, about 50% of the time,
Yeah,
right? So flip a coin and you'll get pretty much the same result, right?
all right. So something I'll definitely look into and see what the easiest way for us to move forward with that.
I would
So make
appreciate it,
clear.
and I think
Yep.
everybody else would as well.
Absolutely. All right, and lastly on my issues was, again, Anthony brought up some very good questions around where we currently stand on our, for lack of a better term, for all those who understand, shop classes, and how we've changed shop classes since I was in school compared to our current method. And we're currently having some of our staff look into and give us suggestions and maybe some thoughts on how we currently stand on that. I'm not gonna go in detail of all the questions, but they were pretty well thought out. Trying to think, was there anything else I wanted in my report / conversation, I guess I said? Yeah, I see it. The district, yeah, what's up?
Just with that final point, can you go in a little further to help us understand the reason for that concern?
I'll give mine, and then since Anthony brought, I will ask Anthony if he wants to speak in on them, but
Because you just shared with us the list of
I
questions.
shared your list of the questions,
much
and I can
better.
understand where the feeling came from, because I remember when we shut down some of the shop classes on the previous tenure here, I had some concerns then, that we want to make sure that we're offering the best way for our students to succeed. And a lot of the time, and this is just me feeling, the college direction isn't always the most beneficial for them, and we want to make sure that we're offering the best avenue for these shop class options, which shop class is the very generic term, but I think it's pretty understandable. At least that's my thought, where the questions were aimed from, and when I saw them and I understood that was my idea. Anthony, did you have anything to, since you came from you?
Just that, with Mr. Lepofsky retiring soon, it's a perfect opportunity to ask him to share his experience, his perspective on where the field is, how it has changed over time, and how, you know, if he had his druthers, what things would look like. We're moving into budget season, and so some of those answers could have an effect on how we decide to allocate resources.
Yeah.
So a follow-up with that, because I feel like we have to be very careful as board when we are questioning teachers, and I know that he's going through you and et cetera, and not going directly to the teacher, so I respect that, that's fine. I just wanted that, a little more background information to feel like when a teacher, for example, is retiring, they don't need to give us an exit interview about their thoughts and feelings about their program. And so I just wanted to know, were the questions really based more on, like, budget? Are we thinking that this is something we're cutting, that we should be adding to? I'm cautious because we are only asking for information from one teacher, yet in some of the questions, it was being referred to as CTE, and there's more in those career and technical exploration classes than just shop classes, and there are other teachers at the high school that do offer other types of CTE type courses. And also, there were questions in regards to LRTC, and are we also reaching out to any teachers or the directors there? I know Carrie obviously does talk with, and so I'd like to know maybe more input from that, and just being cautious that we're only reaching out to one teacher.
That's why,
Hearing more voices in that conversation.
no, absolutely.
I
And
don't want that
and-
one teacher to feel like pegged against a wall because we're just drilling him as he's retiring. Like, that's not the point, so I just wanted to hear that.
Well, no, that's definitely why it was, I really addressed it towards Carrie and to work through it, because realistically, we as board members can't address a teacher directly. It's not, we're not permitted to.
I know they're
And we,
going through
and we,
Carrie,
and
for
they
sure.
need to make sure that they understand that they don't have to answer these questions.
Okay, good.
We're just hoping for, if they want to give us some feedback on a particular area, yeah, it would be perfect if we were able to sit down with every teacher and say, hey, what's the pros and cons of your department, and what do we need, and what, and, you know, they're all gonna say money, you know, but anyways, it's, you know, this one has changed so significantly in the past 15 years, so there was some question about that.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
But absolutely, that was my primary concern when I saw the questions, and I wanted to emphasize that, no, we cannot, it's not in our purview. If they reach out to us, that's one thing. We cannot reach out to them.
Right.
You know, the only person any one of us can reach out to in the school district is sitting to my left. Which actually restricts us more than if we were a regular citizen, which is kind of strange, but that's how it goes, and I think we all just need to remember that. As board members, as Carrie's employer, we're really only allowed to directly communicate with Carrie. Otherwise, we're kind of really messing with the chain of command and everything. If you have, by all means, if you have concerns about any single employee in the district, you communicate with Carrie. So yeah, that was of my first concern.
So I'm gonna work on getting all that information. I just wanna make sure we're clear on that, just like anybody else has asked questions, so I'm just saying out loud that we'll work on getting, I don't know.
We're gonna work on it, yeah.
I don't know if
there's no-
Mr. Lepofsky knows all that information, some of the information from those questions might have to come
Yeah.
from somewhere else, but.
We're gonna, exactly, he's definitely gonna be involved in the discussion.
If I
Yeah.
may. I would just say, I think that my request for contacting Mr. Lepofsky was very diplomatic and sensitive to the fact that he might feel compelled to answer, and was quite explicit, saying, I don't want him to feel this way.
It's all good.
But I want to push back a little bit. The state statute that defines school boards does, quote, it mandates us to, quote, regularly communicate with school employees. So while we are told by the Maine School Management Association that we should not be, that's not a universally held opinion. I think we do have to be careful the way that we want to communicate with staff. And I think that reaching out to the superintendent as a go-between is proper, but I don't think that we are forbidden from doing so, or that we should feel that it is somehow at the edge of our duties. It's in state statute.
All right, and that basically brings most of anything I had for my report up. That being said, I guess anybody else have any thoughts on it? Good. That takes us to public comment. Do we have any public wishing to comment today? All right, Madame. 1 second, please. Our board meetings are conducted for the purpose of carrying out the official business of our schools. It is important to note that meetings of the board are open to the public. However, they are not public forums. At each full board meeting of the board, time is allocated to provide opportunities for citizens and employees to express opinions, concerns, and related to matters under consideration by the board. These comments shall be within the guidelines set forth in board policy BEDH, public participation at board meetings. Copies of the policy are available here and on the district's website. I would like to highlight the following. The chair is responsible for recognizing all speakers. We ask that speakers identify themselves by sharing the names and town of residence. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to express their views. Speakers should direct all comments to the board, specifically the board chair. This is an opportunity for the board to listen to the opinions of the public that relate to school and educational matters. It is not intended to be a conversation or a debate of issues. We know that school-related issues can be emotional, but we ask that civility is maintained. We will not permit profanity, gossip, defamatory comments, shouting at one another, or comments that disparage or attack individuals or groups. The board is faced with many important issues. For the sake of efficiency, the board discourages duplication or repetition of comments. The board will not permit complaints or allegations against staff members. We certainly care about these concerns, but they are personnel matters which the board is not permitted to hear in public. If there are complaints against staff, these will be handled appropriately through our complaint policy KE. To reiterate, this is just a highlight of the key points, but please refer to policy BEDH for a complete description of our public participation policy. There might be conversation at some point of all the times that is appropriate for me to read that. Carrie just went. I saw her. Because I'm sure that you could probably read that just as well as I could.
I was gonna say, you don't have to go all the trouble.
I'm sure you could recite that. How you doing?
Crystal Nicholas from Green. As budget time is here, I invite all of you to consider the following figures based on the U.S. Census and other government and local sources. The largest income bracket in our district is from $75,000 to $149,000. Since no data is available on how this breaks down, and since the next highest, as a lot of data points, bracket is $75,000 and below, which is almost as large, we'll use $80,000 as a figure for what the most common income in our district is per year. So then, per year, sources estimate an average Maine family of 4 spends $10,000 on food, $2,000 on clothing, $19,000 on transportation costs, including car payments, tires, repair, insurance, and gas. $9,000 is spent on health insurance and medical expenses. $1,350 is spent on house insurance, $1,250 on home repair, and $14,400 on mortgage payments. For utilities, assuming our family already has a well, they will pay $2,500 for electricity, $1,200 for phones, and $1,200 for internet. After paying $18,000 in federal and state taxes, our family is left with a total of $2,100, not enough to even pay the property taxes on our house. Please note that not only are these figures, except for the income, rounded down, but also that our district family has no money for extras, no dining out, no vacation, no retirement, no savings. Also note that sources put child care, which was not even included here, as at least $10,000 per child per year. According to MainePublic.org, 30% of Maine households struggle to keep up with basic expenses. At a figure of around $76,400 income per year, with a baseline cost of $72,000 to $105,000, many families are at or above income limits just to pay basics and endure a daily significant struggle to make ends meet. And how many of our district families already receive some form of public assistance? Budgets that continue such taxation percentage increases each year are as irresponsible as they are unsustainable. Folks can't survive if those who have more resources than they do decide that since they can afford an increase, you can pony up too. Spending more than the district can bear is portrayed as supportive, virtuous, and altruistic. But we need smart leadership who is not always passing impossible tax burdens onto poorer folks. Despite what I will entertain as good intentions by good people, we do not always need the bright, shiny new object like AI, EdTech, or the latest educational fad. If current spending is any gauge of student learning, we have seen scores plunge as our spending skyrockets. It is beyond time for true change. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else have any other public comment? All right, seeing any, let's move on to communications. Do I have any communications? Apparently I do not. Superintendent.
Yep.
He does.
So, there was a brief reference to this resignation Terry Canning bus driver. It was effective Friday before vacation, so it's not a new additional driver. I think PTB, it came up in PTB, and it just wasn't on my list to announce at the last meeting. And then Karen Hastings, Special Ed Tech 2 at Green Central School, effective March 6th. And then we have hired Jason Daguerre, custodian assigned to Levitt Area High School, effective during February vacation, and we picked up one nurse sub. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions on communication? All right. Adjustments to the agenda. We have one from the one that was sent out. We have added 8.5 under the consent agenda, which is a consideration and approval of some finance committee sale of computers, which we'll read and go into detail later. Committee reports. Finance, who's taking Ashley's spot?
I
Alex,
can combo it in my PTV report. So we did meet this morning.
It's back to back, so go right ahead.
We met this morning, we talked about quite a few things. Wally was there first thing to let us in on the MacBook, iPad, and Chromebook buyback proposals that he had received. Letting us know that he's going with Total Technology for the buyback of the MacBook and iPads, and then a new outfit that he's using, School Buyback, is going to buy back the Chromebooks for what he called the highest amount he's seen, which is not relatively high, but higher than he's seen, so that's good. He's continuing the practice of giving seniors the option to take their Chromebook after graduation, and that's about it for that. There's a amount of MacBooks that were damaged that the company won't take back at all. Might have a little chip or a crack, that's something that's not, doesn't hinder performance. So he's gonna be exploring a private sale of some sort for those 50-something devices. After that,
Just
we.
to
Yep.
clarify, because this will be part, this is included under the consent, so
Yep.
do we want to know? But I do want to know. How much are we getting?
Yeah, I can tell you.
You want me to?
If you've got it.
So, the bid that was given for the Chromebooks is $5,197.
Which is how much per Chromebook?
It depends on the different version and the quality that it is, but it ranges between $10 and $7 per.
Chromebook.
Highest ever. That's good.
The iPads, nope, these are MacBooks. The quote is $62,525, but it's possible for us to only get 70% of that, which is $40,000 roughly, instead of $62,000. It's still, at that rate, it's still the highest bid. And then the iPads, $10,185, again, possibly only 70%, so $7,000, still the highest bid of all the ones received. So $55,000,
Just like a loan sale.
right.
And that money goes back into the fund and gets used towards other technology
goes into the technology?
So.
Nope.
Well,
No,
no,
Jen?
it goes
Nope.
into-
That too?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah.
It actually would go into miscellaneous revenue because it's the sale of items, and then we could propose to move that into the technology reserve fund in a future fiscal year.
That sounded more,
Yes.
Reasonable?
More official.
more appropriate.
I was waiting, I was
direction.
like, no, that's not really what happened.
It was early. 7:10 this morning.
It was the first one.
Right, the second thing we spoke of, authorizing transfers within warrants for fiscal year '25. There were a couple overages and a couple warrant articles that we need to approve, moving money from existing warrant articles to cover those. Gabby reviewed our solar contract that we're part of. When she came into the district, we were part of a contract that was pre-existing, and it was not efficiently set up in a way that we were not able to claim as many credits as maybe we should have been able to. Gabby has since cleaned that up and allocated the right percentage of usage, I guess, or credits per building. So, you know, in the previous one, Levitt was not considered the highest, you know, use building, which it obviously is. So she has cleaned that up, and we should not have any missed credits in the future. We discussed the audit report. The expenses going up, almost doubled from last year with RHR, but it is still considerably cheaper than other options that were explored.
In other words, the cost of the audit went up.
Yes, that's correct.
You'll see that in the budget. Sorry.
No, it's
We
fine.
accept
Reserve funds, we went over the practice of what we're able to add to the reserve each year, and you know, we've had that discussion several times. And we're gonna have a $1.7 million chunk that we need to develop a plan for over the next 3 years. And we're gonna be discussing a $600,000 carry forward to 26-27, the land purchase, some towards tech reserve, and a chunk towards facilities as part of that plan. Because the facilities is a never-ending bucket. We discussed TES space. This is part of my PTB report from an emergency meeting last week.
Are we
2
on
weeks ago.
PTB
No,
now?
before. Yeah.
It was right before
Before
vacation.
vacation, that's
Are
right.
we on PTB?
No, we're in finance.
We're still in finance?
We're still in
Okay.
finance, but we talked about finance too. So
Double dipped.
the incoming second grade class going into TES is a large class. We had explored a lot of options. We had reviewed possibly a portable unit to be put near the school. Very expensive, not an ideal option. The new architect firm hashed out some quick type of construction we could possibly do in the building. Not a great option either. Peter had come up with the idea to possibly rent space in the Institute building, which was explored slightly, and the determinations that they're just gonna stick with 4 teachers for now, go with 20 kids per class, and that will eliminate the need to budget for a 5th, 3rd grade teacher. So, Kristen was in charge of that and handling it. Gabby, feel free to jump in on this one. We discussed the main care and insurance billing questions that we had had. Ashley had posed some questions about how we bill out for services. Long story short, between the amount of administrative work and salaries and cost to the district, plus it would affect our ED 279 negatively by billing main care, it turns out it's not gonna be worth it in any fashion. So, is that,
That's
Yes.
close.
it's
Yep,
not official maybe?
No, that was good.
good.
Then we reviewed a legal fees breakdown of the fiscal year that we're in. Carrie presented a pie chart that just was a breakdown of topics that legal had been consulted on. Not broken down by cost per topic necessarily, because there may be multiple topics that are handled in a single phone call or email exchange. Year-to-date for the fiscal year, board-related issues was $23,000, and special ed related issues was almost $14,000. Those are most often related to individual student issues. And, you know, there was one issue in particular that has eaten up a lot of that, legal fee. Because last year, I think the special ed legal was
Very low.
very low.
So did that combine both legal lines?
No, they're two different, the legal fees for the board are in system administration, and special ed's legal line is in the special ed warrant article 2.
But what he's referring to, did that include both
No,
of those?
no.
So was that just under the,
That was all in special ed,
23,000 in
Oh.
board-related issue.
was the board
And
one.
then.
okay, that was the
a
board one.
13,000.
Yeah, a separate
Yeah.
14,000 in
Was special.
special.
But the
ed
board
specific.
one also includes other thing, well,
Yeah,
it's basically
it-
anything district-wide for
Yeah.
the most part.
Personnel negotiations, the land purchase, like,
Yeah.
all that.
Okay.
Budget stuff, finance stuff.
That's it for finance and PTB. Like I said, we had one special meeting and talked about the TES spacing issues, so we covered it well.
All right. Finance question for Alex?
Yeah, just a point of information, if, I would appreciate if I could see that pie chart too. Could you share that with us,
I'll
with
send
the
it out.
rest of us?
I'll send it out.
Was it
That'd
in
be
the finance committee?
Packet?
Packet?
No,
No, it
no,
was-
I
yeah,
just,
she-
I just shared it.
Oh, okay.
I just shared it on the
Yeah,
screen.
we can definitely get that out.
Thank you.
All right. PTB committee, Alex.
You got it. That was it.
That was it?
We-
All right,
yeah,
there
the
we go.
special
We're
meeting-
good.
The special meeting was specifically for the TES spacing issue. And our next meeting is March 12th.
Just out of curiosity, what's the next class coming up? Do we have this issue that we were able to push off for next year coming at us?
Nope, this is a bubble. This is,
Bubble.
this is it, so. All the TES groups below are four classrooms, so.
Okay.
In kindergarten's 5, but that's true at every school. That has nothing to do with a large group of kids.
All right. That takes us to policy, which I believe,
Yes, we did not meet this evening. We opted to wait because the policy that we were gonna be discussing, which is JL, which is wellness, Ashley had brought forward and she was not able to make it to this meeting today. So our next meeting will be March 26th, where we will tackle JL, the wellness policy,
okay.
with Ashley in attendance, and Dave, and Teresa, and Joe, and whoever else wants to come. Carrie, you're welcome.
All right. 3, curriculum.
We did not meet tonight, and it says that our next meeting is scheduled for March 12th, but I will not be at that meeting, so tonight we will discuss. We have our curriculum committee members here, so probably at our break between our executive sessions or just before, we will select an alternative date for that meeting.
Sounds good to me. All right, that takes us to Crystal.
Yes, Tri-Town, Kyle was not here, so Alex, myself, and Carrie met on Tuesday of this week, where we got a lot done, and we'll be hearing about that tonight, which is, so I felt really good.
So do we take into account Kyle wasn't here and you got a lot done?
Yeah.
Just checking,
That
just see-
wasn't the point,
We'll
but
take
sure,
that.
sure.
Just letting you know.
Okay.
He was absent.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Gentlemen, which would you like to start? William, thank you.
Pickleball is starting up.
That's exciting.
I thought I heard that, literally.
Boys hockey's in the playoffs. Mhm. There's a Key Club's doing a blood drive next week. Yeah, next week. Art Scouts coming up also next week. I was lucky and a French-speaking musician came into my French class and we learned about Acadian history, like their folklore and like songs.
Cool. Okay. Anything you'd like to add, Rick?
I was gonna mention prom, but you already mentioned that.
Well, no, all I,
Thunder.
if you have something to bring it on, man. You know, you got an update on where it's gonna be, what's going on?
I just heard it was gonna be in the parking lot near a tent, and people aren't too happy about that.
I believe that there's
More
better
work's been
options
happening
coming.
since then, so.
I think we can do
That was the
better.
phone calls I was getting fairly rapidly. So, and I just would like to emphasize that pickleball could be a fall and summer activity too, if we had tennis courts in the district, but apparently we did not. Which we did have, but we let go to waste. I just don't understand that. Sorry, yeah,
Oh, I have
Jamie.
a quick question for William.
What,
William, do you know
William?
what day the blood drive is?
Pretty sure it's the 6th. Yeah, it's the 6th.
It's the 6th.
Yeah.
Is it just in the cafeteria, or do you know
I think it's in, like the small
Small
gym.
gym?
Yeah, I'm pretty
Thank
sure
you.
that's where it's normally.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot there on that one.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. All right, it takes us to administrator reports. Principal Bartash.
I have some exciting news at Leeds. So about 2 years ago, fall of 2023, we were classified as a Tier 3 CSI school, and that came with some nice chunks of professional development money. They gave us 3 years to get off of this. We had guidance from the state. So only about 17 schools in the state were as low as we were in Leeds, and we got off the list over a year early. I am like so proud of the staff and students. They have worked so hard, and our scores are, we're still at a ATSI, which means that there's one area that across the board we still need to work on. The official numbers that I've used before to present haven't come out from the state, but from what I can tell, it's our chronic absenteeism rate from last year. When I looked at it this year, we are, as of end of January, was 10.8, and we wanted to be at a 10%. So we're working on that area. Our scores are up, especially with our students with special needs. So that was really exciting. The staff has worked so hard to get there. Another piece for us is, this year is the 220, sorry, Carrie.
I'm like, that's a very big deal, just want to say, like, we should like, that is a very big deal.
Unfortunately, we lose the $30,000.
Yeah. No good deed goes unpunished. You don't need all that
We're
money.
for it. I have a very strong instructional coach, and so she's kind of learning and picking up the pieces that I won't be able to fund next year. So she's been very valuable, and I mean, I have the money and funding until June. I plan on spending every dime of it, but Carolyn has been fabulous when we sat down. What do we still need to take over so that we can still keep going on ours? Because they gave me 3 years. I planned 3 years, but then they took my money away. It's the 225th anniversary of Leeds. So the school is going to be working with a committee in Leeds to have our school participate in some activities. We're going to have a bicycle parade in the parking lot after we're going to let the kids decorate their bicycles. And the DOE is going to join us that weekend as well, because they want to come and kind of celebrate what we've done and our inclusion practices, because we are still one of 3 schools. And my last piece is, if you want to get up very early in the morning, let me get the rates for the sheet. On March 4th, Channel 8 will be coming to Leeds at 5:40 in the morning to do the weather. So you can stay home and watch with your coffee, and think of us as we're sitting out there with our coffee in the cold. But kids are very excited.
Sounds awesome. And congratulations as well.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we lost the 30 grand, but still, congratulations.
I'm a little upset about that part. Jerry told me it was okay though.
All right, Principal Gammon.
So my exciting news, which is full of exciting news today, is finally our CDS classroom for our 3 and 4 year olds with IEPs began this week. 1 day late because of the snow day. Back in, was it December, Rebecca, we said December, we shared with you what was gonna happen with our 3 and 4 year olds. They were gonna come in. It's 5 days a week, it's half a day. CDS staffs it. There's 1 teacher, 3 ed techs, and currently we have 3 students in the morning session and 4 students in the afternoon. We are working to fill that 4th position in the morning. I've popped in every day and it has been wonderful. The furniture and the setup of the room is just, it's not too much, because these are students who have sensory issues, but it's a beautiful room. The kids are doing great. We're working out a few kinks here and there. Like yesterday, I didn't realize that they go to 3 o'clock even though the rest of the school dismisses at 2. Like, oh, okay, I probably was told that, but I had forgotten it. So just little kinks like that are being worked out, but very excited. They are going to recess with the rest of the pre-K, and so it's added a little energy to our building this week, so it's been fun.
Thank you. Let's see, that takes us to Principal Mates, our host for the evening.
Just trying to update data on the board report. Probably want to highlight the discipline part if we're talking about celebrations. Because it doesn't feel like it. Today was today was the day. But if you look at the trends over the last couple of years, I put that on there. As far as behaviors that warrant students needing to take a break, either in school or out of school, those have gone down significantly. Which I attribute a lot to not only the staff here, but some of the intentional work we've done in the schedule. I've shared each report some of the bar work, but we start every morning with a crew block, which is like an extended advisory in which we're working really hard to build relationships with the kiddos in the hopes that if they understand each other a little bit better and have at least one or two trusted adults in the building, they'll use those resources when and if needed. So that looks pretty good. And then we continue to update the bar data, which is based off of a combination of behavior, attendance, and academic proficiency with the descriptors there. And again, as of mid-February, we're still trending in a positive direction above what the national norms suggest. Any questions?
Do you have any questions for Principal Mates? Sounds awesome. Thank you so much. Director Drysdale.
All right. So I wanted to share, in addition to my report was related to questions that the board had regarding the students that we have receiving special education services and the varieties of disabilities that are identified for. Not all special education, we work off like 13 disabilities, so we do have some disabilities that are not represented in the school, so I didn't list those, but you have those. But another piece that I wanted to mention, going off the pre-K piece, is that we are going to be holding our first pre-K screening for child find. That is our obligation as we've taken on 3- and 4-year-olds to be able to offer screenings for families to bring children in to the schools. And then we would have them go to centers to be screened in their motor skills, their communication skills, their academic readiness skills, their hearing and vision. So we have assembled a small but mighty, energetic team, and so we are going to be holding our first screening on April 16th. We're going to be doing the morning, we are going to be at, I think in Green, and in the afternoon, we're going to be at TPS. We're hoping to have slots for about 8 students at each of the schools. If we find that we have more families that want to screen, we'll plan additional dates. And then this would be an initial screening to really be able, if parents have concerns that their child is not meeting developmental milestones, and being able to see if they would be eligible for special education services for 3- and 4-year-olds. This is kind of our pilot. We're going to try this. And then next year, we're hoping to hold multiple screenings throughout the year, and then also potentially have some sites at daycare centers in the towns as well. So we're going to be sharing information about that, having a flyer on our website and a flyer out in the 3 communities, and communicating with doctors' offices and daycare centers to be able to identify more children that may require special education services. So that, as Elaine had pointed out, we can get them in, get to know them and the family, and get them services.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Nice pie charts.
Yes. Anthony?
So there's a big difference between the autism groups in the kindergarten through 12 range and the pre-K range. Is that typical of a nationwide trend, that this is continuing to be a very rapidly growing body?
I think it is, and I think we certainly have seen an uptick after COVID for students being identified with autism. And we wonder if there are students certainly that may be represented and identified with autism, but the spectrum is so varied. Prior to, they had autism spectrum disorder, and then they had other disability labels within that spectrum that were able to kind of narrow down symptoms that students had, but since they've opened that up, the continuum is wide and varied. I think one of the pieces that I have talked about a little bit with people is that students also may present as a student with autism if they also have social anxiety. And then that would also impact their ability to socialize, because really when you're looking at social autism, it's really a communication disorder, and being able to communicate needs and wants effectively through the socialization that they're doing as well, and that may manifest in a variety of different behaviors.
Yep.
Is the overall proportion changing as well? Meaning the proportion of kids needing special services in the K-12, is that proportion consistent at our pre-K level, or is that a larger proportion at the lower level?
In terms of the numbers or the identified
Yeah, and not just
disabilities?
autism, but overall.
Mhm. Well, we have certainly expanded what CDS we were receiving from CDS for 4-year-olds coming to kindergarten, is we had more students in December for 3 and 4-year-olds than we had ever had CDS coming to public school. And I think we are only seeing the students that are coming to our schools and some of the students that have concerns. I think there probably are more students as well that are under-identified. So we're anticipating through our Child Find activity to find more children that need special education services. They have talked about in cohort 1, because we're cohort 2, in cohort 1, we were told, expect your numbers to double. Whatever you used to receive for students in kindergarten, expect that number to double. And we had between like 18 to close to 30 students, maybe 12 to about 30 students. And we are on our way to 40 students as of February.
So do you think that that's gonna, do you think that that's representative of what that population is gonna look like over time as they move into kindergarten, first grade? Or will a greater influx of kids they just come to school, is that gonna kind of reestablish something that's more like the K-12 proportion that we see now?
I'm not sure, other than what we're learning is that students have been, over 3 and 4-year-olds have been under-identified because the CDS system was not working effectively and families were not accessing. We have many students where they're 4 years old, but we've just identified them and they haven't been identified prior to that. I'm not sure, I think time will tell, because I think we also find, an average year, we may have kindergarten to 12th grade, we may have around 30 to 40 referrals. Like that seems to be an average that we may have. It's not typical for us to have the year where we had 75. It's not typical for us to have the year right after COVID where we had like 20. So, but the range is generally 30 to 40. So we will, I think time will tell what we can expect for 3 and 4-year-olds. I think it's going to kind of bubble and then maybe level out as we move forward.
Thank you.
I would say one thing I think all of us hope for is that if we are identifying students earlier, that the numbers in the older grades will start to go down because we've identified students and intervened earlier, so that they then move out of special education because they don't need the services anymore. And so that's what we're actually hoping.
Any other questions? Thank you so much. That takes us to Assistant Superintendent Gillis.
So as I was preparing this report, I realized we've only had 5 days of school since the last report. So I'm gonna do what Carrie does. I'm gonna tell you what I've done each day. So Monday was a snow day. I worked from home. Tuesday was the coaching lab day at Leeds, hosted by the coach that Shannon referred to, Carolyn Penato. And this is in-house professional development for me and for coaches. We utilize a protocol created by Diane Sweeney Coaching, where we do an observation, provide some specific feedback, and then the other part of the day was spent planning some professional development for the upcoming school year. Wednesday, I met with the Integrated Multi-Tiered Systems of Support Intervention Committee and discussed common language around interventions, differentiation in instruction, supporting students. And the committee also discussed plans for creating a district system to support student learning. And I want to shout out Rebecca Drysdale for setting up breakout rooms in Google Meets with a timer. I was very impressed. I can't wait to learn how to do that. Today, the coaches worked with the principal leadership team, me, Carrie, and Rebecca this morning, to support some of our work around professional learning communities in schools. And tomorrow, I am working with special educators, both teachers and ed techs at Turner Primary School. This is our final day with our inter-reading consultant, and this work is specific for special educators to help support the elementary, and we're sneaking in a middle school, instructional staff with the implementation of inter-reading, with a focus on differentiated instruction, accommodations, modifications, assessment, and more. That's what I've got from my report.
Any questions for Teresa? Not seeing any. Thank you. Superintendent Med.
So I'll be quick because I'm going to be talking later. Last 2 weeks have been spent working on the budget in ed leadership with principals, Rebecca and Teresa, negotiations with my friends Kyle, Alex, and Crystal, regular meetings with principals, Rebecca, Gabby, Evan, Elaine, Doug, Jana, and I already said Evan, have happened. Western Maine superintendents worked on the school calendar. We have to have a regional calendar because we send students to LRTC, so we should have a calendar coming to the next meeting, I think March 12th meeting. I submitted my letters for the 3 town reports. And the consent agenda, you will see the job descriptions that got pulled at the last meeting because we had forgotten to just share them with the association first, so they've been shared, no changes have been made, so that's what's on there. And you'll see the item of the Finance Committee recommendation for the bids to sell technology. And I was just gonna, I had notes here about would come back in the miscellaneous revenue, and then we could decide, the board could decide to send it to the tech reserve account. And then just a reminder that our next meeting is actually a budget workshop. It is Thursday, next Thursday, March 5th. It is at 5 o'clock and is at the high school. Both budget workshops will be at the high school. We made that change after encountering different technology issues and various layouts in other buildings, and just decided staying in one location for those budget workshops was going to be easier. So both workshops are at the high school.
Yeah, microphones, if I remember right, was one of our issues.
Yep.
Remember, this is where if you have a question on the consent agenda, unless you want to pull it out, this might be where you want to ask it real quick. Not seeing any, so that takes us to consent agenda. Does anybody wish to have anything pulled out of the consent agenda? Okay. Not seeing any requests. Consent agenda. items to be acted upon collectively unless a board member asks that a specific item be acted upon individually. 8.1, approval of the superintendent's recommendation of the revised job descriptions. 8.1.1, gifted and talented teacher. 8.1.2, extended school year lead teacher. 8.1.3, food service manager. 8.1.4, speech language pathologist. 8.1.5, accounts payable specialist. 8.2, consideration of policy committee recommended second reading and approval of revised policy DKC, employee expense authorization and reimbursement. 8.3, consideration of policy committee recommended second reading and approval of revised policy JJIF, management of concussions. 8.4, consideration and approval of the finance committee recommended December operating and expenditure reports. And 8.5, which is our added one, consideration and approval of the finance committee recommendation of bids for selling outdated MacBooks and iPads to technology and selling Chromebooks to school buyback. Is that correct? I think so. I wrote it, so. I copied it, so I think that's right. I don't know.
Yes.
All right, do we have a motion? Motion.
Is
Over
that
here we
Jenny?
have Bree and Jenny.
Okay.
All those in favor? All those opposed? We move on. Takes us to old business, which to my knowledge, we have no old business, which takes us to new business. And this is 10.1, the stimulating presentation by RHR Smith & Company on the FY25 audit.
This, we tested this before, so we're just gonna assume it's still gonna work.
She's there, or somebody's there.
Hi Heather, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, my goodness, look at that. First try. Jana, you get all the credit.
Are we supposed to have another person?
Yes, Sam. Sam is joining us.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm Heather Hunter, I'm the audit director for RHR Smith, and with me tonight is Sam Oganoff. He was your audit manager. And let me get this presentation started. Oops, I need to.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
share
yep. Hang on 1 second, sorry.
Okay.
Can you try again?
Are you able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Technology's great when it works. There we go. So we had completed the audit for the FY 2025 audit for this past year. And as I mentioned, I'm Heather Hunter, the audit director for RHR Smith, and Sam Oganoff was the audit manager. I know he is having some technical difficulties now, so he will be hopefully joining us soon. So we'll start off talking about roles and responsibilities within the audit. When we look at the roles and responsibilities each party shares in this audit endeavor, so from the client's point of view, your responsibilities include creating and setting the internal control environment, process and procedures that go along with that, complying with your laws, regulations, and so forth, as well as accounting standards out there, including generally accepted accounting principles and generally governmental audit standards. It also talks about knowing how to use your software and extract reports, use it for your internal control environment. We look at estimates that you derive,
It includes preparing reconciliations on a monthly basis, trial balances, posting adjustments, sharing that information with us on a timely basis. And if you go out and get grants, understanding what those grants include for compliance requirements. From our side of the audit, we have auditing standards out there that are dictated by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. And that requires us to understand your control environments. We do not render an opinion, but we do look at and understand how that works within your operations to avoid any material misstatements of your financial statements. We may recommend adjustments throughout the process to remedy any material misstatements or just other things that come to our attention that may resolve some variances within reconciliations and so forth. We audit for the financial statements from the governmental activities, if there are any business activities. In your case, you don't have any. And then we look at the aggregate of all of the non-major funds. We validate your adherence with GAAP and GASB out there. We look at the estimates that you've shared with us. We resolve, hopefully, any disagreements with management. I'm happy to say there weren't any for this audit. We prepare your draft financial statements, your footnotes, and any required supplemental information that's required, as well as your federal compliance report. And then lastly, we make recommendations to improve your internal control environment as it may compare to best standards out there. But the goal of the audit ultimately is to get this audit opinion. The audit opinion reflects this year, it's an unqualified, the highest audit opinion out there. So kudos to Gabby and her team for achieving this goal. And we will jump right into your financial information. I have referenced the various statement and page numbers on here in your audit report, if it's easier for you to follow along there. So this is a 3-year trend of your balance sheet for your governmental funds. And you will note the upward trajectory in the asset side, both in cash and total assets. Over the last 3 years, your total assets increased by $953,543, or about 4%. And all of that growth represented an increase in cash of about $1.1 million in total, or a 5.4% increase. Your liabilities grew this year by about $1.1 million, or 13.6%. And that's largely due to timing differences in accounts payable this year, as well as increase in accrued payroll balances. Kind of a measure or an index or ratio we use compared to private sector is known as the quick or current ratio. It's a solvency ratio that kind of explains how you're able, from a cash standpoint, to satisfy your cash flows and your liability needs. So in this particular case, because you have no inventory, your quick ratio and your current ratio are both 2.6. Both of those are a little bit above the industry benchmarks. Industry benchmarks for the current ratio is 2 and the quick ratio is 1. So what this means is for every dollar of liabilities, you have $2.60 of assets to cover that. So it gives you some financial flexibility in your cash flows. You also had a school lunch that qualified as a major program or a major fund for financial statement purposes. It had total assets of $820,461. It decreased slightly by about $250,000, and it had a total fund balance of $806,160. And that had a decrease by that same, a little over $250,000. You had a new fund this particular year that resulted in some loan proceeds that you also had expenditures and revenue coming in that totaled a little over $4 million in that major fund as well. Looking at your fund balance, that tends to be the area everybody likes to kind of hone in on. And you'll see the details of what makes up your fund balance breakdowns are found in the footnotes. Those are found on page 39 through 40. And we have various classifications of fund balance. In your particular case, you don't have, or you don't utilize the non-spendable or the restricted fund. Your committed fund balance is, represents set aside funds for capital purposes, regular instruction, as well as a technology reserve. Your assigned fund balance typically represents that amount you are carrying forward to offset the next year's budgetary balance. And then you have your unassigned balance, which is kind of the most flexible category that you have in your three categories. And that allows you the greatest discretion on how to use those funds. In your particular case, your unassigned fund balance is $6.1 million, and it provides about a 16.5 expenditure coverage, and that it represents about 2 months. So that is a very healthy fund balance especially for schools. I did a recent presentation that was significantly less than that, so kudos to you for having the most financial flexibility with regards to your unassigned fund balance. And again, you can see your 3-year trend in each of those 3 categories that you utilize in your fund balance. In your committed fund balance, you will see last year you had that kind of spike there for capital purchases, and then it kind of came back down in line a little bit above your 2023 numbers. Your unassigned, you took a little bit of a dip this past year. Otherwise, it was relatively stable. And then you can see your overall climb in the unassigned fund balance of year over year. So good numbers. Again, looking at the general fund, and we'll look at the revenue comparisons at this point. This is your 3-year trend for your various revenue categories. Total revenues climbed about $2.82 million or 4% this past year. Like most main school districts, your intergovernmental revenues remains the largest revenue source at $21.3 million. And that represents 58% of your total revenues received within the last fiscal year. That rose by $2.36 million, or just shy of 6%. Likewise, with other municipalities, your local support from taxes represents your second largest revenue source. In this particular case, it was $15.2 million, or 41% of your total revenue source, and it increased by $265,353, or just a little over 1%. You have charges for service, your investment earnings, and your other, all rose by a total of just shy of $200,000 this past year, or 28%. And we are seeing across the board, anybody that has those larger cash balance and or increases in cash are seeing the upward climb of the interest based upon the rate environment. And we'll talk a little bit more about that on this next screen here, or slide. This represents your budget to actual from a revenue standpoint. So you have budgeted little over $34.2 million. Your actual revenues came in at $647,183. So you had an overall surplus of $391,540, our surplus revenue collections. That represents about 1% of your budgeted estimates. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you'll see that spike there in the interest income of $180,000. Again, you have the good double whammy from this standpoint. You had increased cash, plus the interest rate environment is still pretty competitive out there. And that number accounts for about 46% of your overall revenue surplus. And I apologize, this slide tends to be a little small, I know, when on the bigger projections, but you will see your various expenditure categories here for your general fund. That's a 3-year trend for those. Your total expenditures were $37 million or $37.1 million, with regular instruction accounting for about 34% of that total, followed by special ed at 23.5 and facilities at 11.5. So those tend to be your biggest cost drivers. I'm sure it's no great surprise to you, nor does it differ significantly from any other school district within the state. The total expenditures rose this year by about $4.2 million or 6%. And this gives you that budget comparison by your warrant article. So you will see your final budget was $35.6 million. Your actual expenditures totaled about $34.8 million, producing a budgetary surplus of just under $800,000, or 2.2% of your final budget. The surplus in your regular instruction helped kind of temper your special education and your other instruction deficits there, leaving the overall surplus primarily coming from your transportation and your facilities maintenance, those two articles 8 and 9 that you will see down there. So between your revenue and your expenditure surpluses, the overall budgetary surplus totaled $1,187,201. And I'm not sure if Sam was able to jump on, so I will continue with the management letter comments. Both of our management letter comments dealt with student activity funds, so it's cash receipting and cash disbursement. Again, making sure those bank balance or bank deposits get to the bank on a timely basis, just for overall security purposes. And then when we look at disbursements, we want to make sure those are all approved prior to payment, just, to make sure the transactions are properly accounted for and help reduce any risk of loss or fraud out there. And I know Gabby's team has already started putting measures and procedures in place to address both of these. I am also happy to say with your single audit, you had no findings or question costs. So with the complications in the various federal grants out there and some of the stipulations, going without any findings or question cost is truly a big deal. You wouldn't think it would be, but it is a big deal. So again, congratulations to those, the overall financial support to Gabby's team and all of the individuals that are dealing with the federal compliance side of the house. And this pretty much wraps up our audit. I would be happy to answer any questions anybody might have. Stop sharing there.
Does anybody have any questions for her? I'm not seeing any, though. I'm not seeing any, so I think we thank you, and
Thank you, Heather.
thank you so much. I think you're good to go.
Good news.
All right. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you, Heather.
Nice work, Gabby.
Yes, excellent work,
Yes,
Gabby.
Take all the credit. Thank you.
Yeah, more clapping tonight, right?
All right. That takes us to the binders.
No, it's not the binders. Binders are just a vehicle.
It is the binder.
All right.
Our 27 budget introduction. Superintendent Med.
This is the show.
There we go.
We're doing it.
Fireworks.
It's like the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
February, all right. Okay, so, your budget books,
Hold on.
Super Bowl. So, no major changes to your budget books. Gabby and I didn't make any decisions to like really mess with you or anything. So we'll spend a little bit. My intention tonight is to sort of a big picture overview, highlight a couple things to draw your attention to. Then you have time to go through and read. What you've got in there are, and just a couple things to remind you we changed. The executive summaries are still in there from each area, but they're not being presented to you. I think when I first got here, that was sort of the habit, and I think you all agreed that you were perfectly capable of reading those and did not need them to be presented again. So you will see next week the folks that will be here for all the warrant articles that basically deal with schools. And I think we also decided to do them in order, just to help you guys keep them in order. So it'll be 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and through 7. So we'll have all the principals here, and Wally, Rebecca, Teresa, so we'll deal with all that next week. Also within each section is if there is a new position or program or anything like that, you'll see a new a proposal for that will give you the explanation. Okay? So I'm just going to do an overview and then interrupt, stop me at any time. It doesn't necessarily follow. I'm not going like warrant article by warrant article. I'm trying to just do a big picture, and then because some of what I'm going to talk about is going to cross warrant articles, right? Because it might be a position that moves from regular ed into special ed. So there's a reduction in one warrant article, it's moved into another one. Make sense? Questions before I get started? Okay. So many people have looked at this. If you find an error, I am going to be so irritated.
Oh, now we have a challenge.
I know, right? Keep you on your toes. All right, so I always start with a reminder of the strategic plan. I did an updated presentation for you before break so that you would sort of have that fresh on your mind. But this is what we use when we're making these decisions, right? Sort of trying to keep ourselves on the right path for the goals that the board has set within the strategic plan. So just sort of pull this back up to remind you, and this is how we're doing our work. Okay, I also always provide you with some context. This provides you, and these numbers are provided by the state, so they're not numbers that we calculate, but this provides you with the per pupil expenditure in our school district, school districts around us, the state, and my favorite, I always put Greeley in there, just because. So I won't
I
make
assume
any other
Greeley's
comments.
51 or whatever it is?
51, right on over there. As a former high school principal, I always refer to the high school. So we are, in the region in which we are in, we are spending the third lowest amount. Auburn is at $17,405 per pupil. 16 is Poland Miami Mechanic Falls, and then we have been, since I've been here, we have been within the 2 or 3, right? That is where we have landed. RSU 4 is over at Oak Hill, 17 is Oxford Hills, Lewiston, RSU 10, Rumford Buckfield, 73 is Spruce Mountain, 15 is Greater Gloucester, 2 is Monmouth and Halldale, 38 is Maranacook School District, the state average, and then, these blues are, I messed the blues, because we updated the numbers. There's an error.
But you found it, so it doesn't
Updated
count.
the errors. So the blue needs to go over here. This is not the state average. The state average is 21,707.17. Damn it.
So close.
And I always put a Cumberland County school on there because I will remind you that these schools are minimum receivers in state subsidy. They don't get very much money from the state. Their per pupil is $24,529.
You're referring to the Cumberland County schools don't get much
Yes,
money.
I am. I'm referring Greeley, but if we put Yarmouth up there, Cape, Falmouth, pick your poison.
And
So
that's- and
I
that's
think
why
I
we're
put that
watching the
up there
legislature.
because, I put that up there because the essential program and services that the state provides outlines what is essential. But different communities in the end decide what is essential. And some communities have the ability to decide French in first grade is essential. Other communities eliminate French in the middle school because we can't afford it, right? So that range exists, right? And that's just the reality of the how funding works. Different schools, different districts can decide what's essential beyond what the state provides us in the funding formula. So, just my little statement on equity. Enrollment. So, if you look, we are at the highest we've been since 2017. So that is pretty much at the high in the decade. Right as the pandemic was setting in, we were at 2013. We have now surpassed that. Weirdly, it kind of looks weirdly this like the same number, but I think it's just the way that chart works. But we are now above where we were before the sort of like that dip that occurred.
Carrie?
This is very unusual, yes.
Somebody asked me the other day, and I couldn't give an honest answer. Our current enrollment counts pre-K and up, correct? Not the 3 and 4-year-olds, but it counts pre-K and up.
Kids who are in pre-K, correct?
Yes.
The 4
So so realistically, our comparisons, because over the past, we then expanded the how was our comparisons compared to the pre-K that was like, that
Teresa,
was.
do you remember when pre-K was added to the district? It's been a long time, right?
No,
Prior
I
to
don't.
2017.
15
I was here when
years?
we did it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess 15.
So
Some impact.
so we'd have to go prior to this. We'd have to go prior to this chart to see what impact that has. I think we have, oh geez, I have to look. Where's that
Huh?
number? It would be on.
It was one of my first
Yeah,
terms.
I could give you the actual number of kids we have enrolled in pre-K. It is not, it's just slightly different than the number we end up in kindergarten. The vast majority of families are sending their kids to pre-K. So we'll have a small bump into kindergarten, but maybe 10 kids. Elaine, is that about right for you?
That
And
would be
Shannon,
that's what we
yours
plan
is
on.
almost exactly the number.
We only get like 3 or 4.
Yeah, so our pre-K numbers are pretty solid and a really good representation of what kindergarten is gonna look like. So my guess is, I think an average class might be 140, 150 cohort, like all the kids, so it's gonna be pretty close to that.
And then, and then 3 and 4-year-olds are not counted, even though they're currently.
They are not counted for the
It does.
purposes of this, which is data that gives us our subsidy, correct. So that is a different data count. So we did not fold them into this number. And then the other context that I've provided for you always is around our percentage of our teachers who have 3 or less years of experience. And so us and the state did a big jump for the last 2 years, but this is the first year where the state started to drop down, but we have stayed high. 16% of the teachers that we have working for us have less than 3 years of experience. And that's an important number in terms of just the resources that it requires to get a new teacher up and running so that they're successful, that they're providing students with the instruction they should be, providing them how much time and energy it takes with mentors and administrators and all those things. So I think it is important that I was surprised to see that number dip. And actually the state just updated some of this. Like I didn't have that number and Gabby was in looking at some of my other numbers and noticed that things had been updated. So I didn't have the state number. So we are holding steady at a relatively young population of teachers. Okay. Bird's eye view. I couldn't come up with a better title. And then there was a lot of debate at leadership about where the apostrophe goes. So other people have thoughts. Feel free to share. That's where we landed this morning.
Is it one bird or multiple birds?
Well, right. That was the conversation. We decided there was a single bird with an eye looking down. That's what we decided. So that's where the apostrophe landed. So
Tilted its head.
what we are presenting to you in this budget is a budget that is an increase of 6.13% over last year. So that is budget to budget. The total budget number is $39,653,000, and every time I round a number, Gabby's going to have a small seizure. So that is the number. That is the budget you're going to see. This represents a significant amount of work. Initially, we were looking at 9% just a couple weeks ago, so we've been able to do a lot of good work on that. Staff health insurance. Last year, if you remember the sad tale where we did our normal budget at a 10% increase like every other school district, we ended up coming in at 12%, so we had to, at the last minute, why are you looking at me?
12.9%, it's a big difference.
Oh, sorry. That's a rounding, that's not gonna be let go. 12.9%, almost 13%. So we budgeted at 500,000. This year, we've made the decision and ended up needing more than that. So this year, we made the decision, like all school districts, honestly, the superintendents have consulted, we have budgeted at a 15% increase, which is essentially $1 million. So $1 million of this budget is health insurance, projected increases.
So
Shocking.
you're saying the increase will be $1 million?
The increase, we are budgeting an increase of $1 million. If you recall from my ED 279, that is exactly the amount of money we got in additional subsidy. So the additional subsidy we got, and again, we were very lucky. We are one of the few districts that is growing in students. Nobody that around us really got, of a size like us, got this amount of additional subsidy. That subsidy is currently really gonna support health insurance increases. All other increases are really not gonna be part of what that additional subsidy granted us. So that is sort of the sobering news. We're gonna do a lot of finger crossing that we're not gonna actually come in at 15%. But I think I mentioned a couple weeks ago that we do know that we have used 120% of the premiums that we paid. So we know that we have used more than we've paid in, which means there's a guarantee increase for sure. Just how much that is depends on the whole state, you know, what that looks like across the board, and what decisions the health insurance makes in terms of like, are they gonna mitigate some of these increases by increasing
Deductibles or co-pays.
Deductibles and co-pays and those things, right? So there's lots of things they may do before they just send us that whole amount. But this really is gonna be, this is the most important number that we're really dealing with, that we, again, as always, won't have a lot of information until the very last day, like the very last week. So this is sort of like big picture, because this is really the pressure. Last year, if you remember, we felt a tremendous amount of pressure around special education, and in particular, our main care, the portion of main care that we had to pay, and we increased the budget substantially due to that. We've got ourselves corrected on that, so we're not looking at that kind of pressure again. It's still an increase, it's still high, but it's not like it was. This really is that pressure this year. Good? Okay, so almost everything we're doing is responding to enrollment and student needs. So lots of positions are being reallocated. So in green, we are eliminating the 6th grade position, and that's all, it's all class sizes, right? All of this is determined by class sizes. We are eliminating a 6th grade position, but we have increasing student needs and are gonna turn that into a special education teacher. Green currently has the equivalent of 3 special education teachers. 2 of them are our employees, the 3rd one is a contracted employee. So the second piece we're gonna do is take that contracted special education case manager and turn that into one of our employees. So Green has had trouble in the past recruiting and retaining and holding on to special education teachers. They're in a much better place than they were, so we feel like it's that time to sort of move from that contracted service to an employee. And given the increasing needs of some students that we have in that building, we really need that 4th teacher. So you will see this is gonna be neutral because we are spending about the same amount of money on the contract as we would for a teacher. So this you'll see no change. This you'll see a shift from regular instruction to special education. At Turner Primary, we are going to be eliminating a 2nd grade teacher, again, due to class sizes. 1st grade has only 4 teachers. There's not a bubble from kindergarten to 1st grade, they only need 4 teachers. kindergarten everywhere, we keep smaller class sizes, so there are 5 kindergarten teachers at Turner Primary, and that will stay. So that second grade teacher, we are doing 2 things. So I want to tell a little bit of a story. So when I got here, Turner Primary had 3 regular instruction intervention ed techs. Green and Leeds also have that. Green and Leeds have title funding. So those ed techs, and this was part of last year's, like, all the cuts that we did and the concerns we had about funding from the federal government, those positions are all funded out of Title I. Turner Primary doesn't have Title I funds, neither does Turner Elementary. So those are in the regular education budget. So this is how they provide interventions to students who need support to get caught up. In the budget cutting, there was one ed tech position that the former principal, Kim Fuller, could not fill, hadn't been filled since I'd been here, so we decided to eliminate the position. So Turner Primary went from 3 ed tech interventionists to 2. They have 300 students, the same number of students that have at Green, same number of students at Turner Elementary. Turner Elementary also has 3 ed techs. So they went to 2 because we just didn't think to keep carrying the position we couldn't fill. They have struggled to maintain 2 full positions, and in fact find themselves again down to just 1. So we're sort of feeling like we want to try and solve this problem with a more permanent solution that we think we can staff versus continually trying to search for ed techs that we can't hire. So lots of credit to Elaine for sort of working through this. So our proposal is to change this second grade teacher into an intervention teacher, but also eliminate that open ed tech position we have right now that we have not been able to fill. So in the end, what Turner Primary would have is a single intervention ed tech and an intervention teacher to tackle building and maintaining an intervention system. In the end, it ends up saving $20,000. So Turner Primary is still only going to have 2 positions dedicated to intervention, but with a teacher, the skill, the training, the experience, all those things, I think Elaine is feeling really confident that that will stabilize this system that they have a really hard time doing consistently and providing services to kids. And this is interventions for kids not with IEPs. This is for interventions for kids who need assistance, who are behind in reading and math, and need extra help, and we're not able to provide it to them. And if they don't get it first, second, kindergarten, it just gets compounded. So you'll see that in there. Questions on that? Okay. Okay, 11, and actually this goes to your questions, Anthony, so it's very timely. So we have a retirement of a tech ed teacher. This is something, so I learned, Evan's been working this problem in his brain for a long time, knowing this retirement is coming, and knowing that a certification for that type of teacher really doesn't exist in Maine anymore. So Evan has reached out to Rob Callahan, who is the director of LRTC, to talk about contracting with LRTC to provide us with a CTE certified teacher, taking this position here, working in our building, providing courses to Levitt students, but by having that teacher being employed by LRTC, we don't have to worry about the teacher certification that we might need for somebody working in a school. They would get their CTE certification, that would be their employer, but we would have that teacher here. Cost will be the same. We're just going to trade one position for another. It's not that different. It's very similar. We have JMG program at the high school. We contract with JMG for that program. But that teacher operates like our teacher here. So, you all right? So that's what's good. So that's the plan here. That's a shift. It's a way to solve a problem that is a really difficult problem to solve in terms of finding qualified people who can get the proper certification.
Just out of curiosity, I probably should know this, but I don't. What are the classes, because classes at the high school depend so much upon our staff. So what are the classes we're losing with this teacher, and would it be similar classes being brought back with the LRT?
I think that's Evan's intention, but I'm going to let Evan talk about that next week.
Okay.
Yeah, but his intention is to provide similar programming. I think a CTE teacher doesn't necessarily need a bachelor's degree, like they may come through through the whatever certifications and education they have in their field. So it's just different versus if you want to have a teacher certification, you need a bachelor's degree. So it just really provides more flexibility. And last year we cut at the last minute science teacher. They need that science teacher back, which we knew at that point that was a 1-year issue. So that position has now been added into the budget again.
Do we have somebody, we haven't
posted
we
it
haven't
yet.
posted
and
yet,
it's-
so yeah.
It's pending the budget, so.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. At Turner Elementary, we've had significant needs of students. They are similar to Green. They currently have 3 special education teachers. They need a 4th one. And so what we are looking to add in the special education budget is a teacher and 3 ed techs to that particular school. We've had some students move into the building or return from out-of-district placements, and we have had long-term sub positions to help support them. And so those positions really need to go into the budget now, because those are the needs that we have. Lead Central, you'll see in special education, you all approved adding this position about a month ago. That position now needs to move into the budget. And so that's is that the actual number, or did we update it? Yeah, that's the actual number. I thought it was pretty close.
I know, no, you were spot on, I was confused.
Oh, say that again?
Move on.
That was recorded!
You can replay that for yourself anytime you want.
Oh, I'm so gonna replay that. I'm gonna put it on my TikTok. No, I'm kidding, I don't have one. Green. So with Green, new position. So this is a new position. We don't have. So the other positions were reallocated. So 6th grade to special ed, a current contract to an employee. At Green, this would be a new ed tech to go with that new special education teacher. Typically, you have a special education teacher and an ed tech or more, depending on the program they're working, to help provide the services to kids. So that's what is there. And then just as a side, speech is always something that we talk a lot about. The increase in the speech, you'll see in the speech line for K-8 has gone up $138,000. That's just all contracted. We still have not added speech positions into the budget, but if we were to find one and hire one, then we would simply reduce how much we're spending in contract and then spend that. We'd have to come back to you to add the position back in because we would have found one, but then we would simply reduce spending in the contract. Transportation, so you're gonna see, we've done a similar thing that we did with speech. Actually, you're gonna see an increase in contracted transportation costs, but we have offset that by reducing 2 bus driver positions. So that doesn't mean that we wouldn't hire a bus driver if we found one, because then we would spend less on contracted. But knowing how the transportation sort of landscape has played out, we're not sure double budgeting, both contract and for employees, makes any sense. So we would just simply come to you, if we found a bus driver, we would come to you, add that position, stop spending, pay for that out of the contracted line, reduce what we're paying in contracted, but it doesn't make sense to budget both. So similar strategy as we did in speech pathology. So that, between that offset, it's an increase of $69,000. So in the contracted line, it's a bigger number than that, but we've reduced the bus driver line. And then the wastewater treatment plant comes fully on board. So that payment starts $121. $121,000. How many years is that on? Do you remember?
Oh, I think it's 25.
25. We will do an official opening ceremony this spring when it's not disgusting. All right, so other instruction is the warrant article. It deals with athletics, co-curriculars, what else is in there? Pretty much those 2 things, right? And summer school for the high school. So you're gonna see some additional stipends that we've added in here. Both track and football have huge numbers of kids participating. And you get to a point where it's not safe to have that many kids and not enough supervision. So Evan is proposing an additional stipend for a track coach and an additional stipend for football coach. I think football has 80 kids, track has over 100. And you just can't have that many kids with implements and doing things without having enough eyes on them. This becomes the year we fully fund lacrosse at the high school and the middle school. So this is officials, transportation, equipment, things like that. Stipends are in the budget we're in right now. So this just rounds that out. This is year 3, and this is when we take over the program. We have a cart that the athletic trainer uses. It's probably 25 years old. It doesn't work anymore. It has died. So we need a way for the trainer to get around and to be able to get kids off the field if they're injured. So they have put in a cart right now. They are using the maintenance gator, which doesn't necessarily always, the kids can't always sit in it very well, plus then maintenance doesn't have their gator. So the cart that they currently have that they've been using for a quarter of a decade died. Jana's proposing, you all heard about an expansion team at the middle school, proposing to add that into the budget because there's so many kids who want to play and there's just not enough room. Middle school is also requesting an additional stipend for a unified coordinator. There is a coordinator stipend at the high school. There is unified at the middle school, but right now nobody's getting paid, and so we need to get that organized. The biggest increase, so this warrant article is, I think, the winner at the highest increase. It's not the most money, but in terms of percentage, the highest increase is actual transportation costs due to contracting. So when you saw the audit, we were way over in that line last year, and that was because we were contracting for athletic trips and we just overspent the warrant article because we didn't have a choice. So I think Gabby and I sort of said, all right, it's time to sort of correct that and be honest about how much it really costs. So this is a combination of the middle school and the high school. I think about 20,000 of it is in the middle school and the other 30 is at the high school. And then finally, we have a robotics team for the high school and the middle school that has never been stipended. We have an elementary stipend for a robotics team. So I asked Evan to submit a request for a stipend for that position. Very successful, lots of kids doing good stuff.
Carrie?
Yep.
You said that the cart died after a quarter of a decade. Did you mean a quarter century?
Yeah,
25
she meant a
years.
quarter
Yes.
century, yes, yeah,
Because
yeah.
2.5 years is a
Yeah.
very
No,
short lifespan.
25 years. I
25
should have
years.
just stuck with 25 years instead of getting fancy. Yes, thank you. I mean, Evan was like, it was here when I started here, so that's a forever ago. Okay, so a couple of things that we've done with principals and to sort of try to get this budget as low as we can without really eliminating anything. So we know there's conversation around instructional coaches and the amount of money that we spend on that. I think last year I provided the data for you all that it's about $500,000, $500,000. Worked with the coaches or principals around their priorities, and we can access more Title I money for coaching, but it means that there's a reduction in how much money we have available for professional development. The principals unanimously favored keeping the coaches and reducing professional development funds. So we did that. So what you see in this budget is a removal of the instructional coach at Leeds, and the reason Leeds and Green show up here is because Leeds and Green have the title funding. So we can move these positions into title funding. We do that by reducing the amount of money we have for professional development. But these positions provide professional development, and I think Shannon gave a good example of that. So the entire coach position at Leeds was moved into Title I funding. 15% of the Green instructional coach was moved into Title I funding. All the coaches will add academic intervention to their job responsibilities. Some of them are already doing that. It will just be more formalized. So it's not just professional development, but also helping to support and manage academic interventions. To do that, we eliminated 2 intervention ed techs, one at Green and one at Leeds. So they will still have 3 intervention ed techs. At Green, 2 of them are funded by title, 1 of them is funded in regular education. Leeds, all 3 of them are funded in title. So a total budget reduction is reflected in the numbers we've given you of $111,000. every principal felt 100% confident that this was a decision that was not gonna do damage to kids in terms of the services that they received, and was gonna keep systems in place to make sure that teachers are getting what they need to implement reading and math curriculum materials. So that reduction is already reflected in the budget you have. So last year, I know we were last year and the year before, we were having trouble sort of keeping track of what positions we cut and what we eliminated. And when Gabby and I did the sort of budget analysis for you back in November, we also did a count, like how many positions over the years have we added and subtracted. And it turns out we've taken away 4 more than we've added. So the budget increases we're seeing are not because we've fattened up with so many people on the payroll. So this just summarizes what I just shared with you in terms of the positions that we're looking at. So these are new positions, and they're not all lined up because they don't all line up. But a lot of those new positions, remember, are reallocated. So they're not new money. And then these are positions that we eliminated in the budget. Okay, so that's where we stand right now. So the top part, these are teachers. So again, a contracted, the new position is a contracted CET teacher, but that comes from eliminating the high school tech ed teacher, right? So it's funded by that. Does that make sense? It's not necessarily one-to-one, but like an intervention teacher at TPS is just a shift of a classroom teacher. So again, new position, but not new money. Okay, a couple other things that we've done. Last year we toyed with this year we're going to do this. There's a retirement coming, so the guidance secretary is being reclassified and moved into the ESP contract admin secretary. That's a savings of $24,000. The unified bocce stipend that's currently in the budget, Eben is saying that bocce is happening during the school day. Like they don't need a stipend for an after-school activity, so that actually helps to fund at least one of those stipends that he's requested. The other thing that we've been doing is the NWEA in 9th grade. It's not paid for by the state because it's not required. It is something that the high school folks said that they can do without in terms of that data, that it's not essential data for them like it is, I think, at those lower grades. We also pay for the NWEA at 1st and 2nd grade, but that data is much more essential at that age group because they're just learning to read, they're just learning to do math, so having information on those kids is important. So we're going to continue to pay for that test. Okay, so we talked a lot about Turner Space. We've talked about maybe portables, all that stuff. I'm just summarizing it all here to make sure everybody's clear. We talked about renting, we talked about renovating, we talked about portables. In the end, there are 80 kids in 2nd grade at Turner Primary School and 5 teachers. That's about a 16 class size. We're going to move that group of kids to TES with 4 teachers. That gets them to a class size of 20. Those are the exact same size numbers that are going to be at Leeds and at Green for next year. Teachers at TES felt comfortable with that. They prefer that to having themselves split between going outside, different buildings, those kinds of things. The renovations we looked at would have been probably $250,000. And everybody thought we could pull it off over the summer, but that just seemed like a crazy amount of money without a long-term plan. So we really wanted to put the pause on that, make that long-term plan for TES that we know we need to make, and put that into place when we do that. So no rented space, nothing like that. It would, initially Gabby and I had about $100,000 in the budget, we were like, all right, let's leave that teacher in there, let's leave some money for rented space. But we decided at the beginning of this week, in consultation with Kristen and her staff, that we didn't need that, so that $100,000's been pulled out. I don't have a final number, but just a reminder that we implemented new math materials for grades 3 through 8. Next year, we're adding K through 2, so that is going to be, I don't have final numbers for that because we're still trying to finalize a couple of the estimates. Our cost share. Last year is the first time we started providing funding to LRTC. If you remember, the cost sharing agreement was updated. We voted on that. Last year, our share was somewhere around $8,000. This year, the request is about $13,000. I have an LRTC advisory meeting tomorrow, so I may get some updates, but it's up $5,000. They are adding a program, and the problem with adding a program at the CTE level is that they get the funding for it the next year. You've got to fund it to get it up and running, and then the subsidy comes. So there's some upfront costs. I believe the new program is landscaping, but I'll get more information tomorrow. And when we joined a private pay for main paid leave, we decided to not go with the state plan, got a private plan. It exempted us from paying some of those initial taxes, but now we have to start paying those taxes. We were able to budget just enough for May and June, July and August this year. Next year, it's gonna be the full amount, so it will increase the budget that much. So, adult ed, this has contributed to some, this has been frustrating. So I gave you some of that update with the ED 279, that all of a sudden $590,000 disappeared from the ED 279. We were waiting for information about what was gonna happen with adult ed. So what has happened is we got word that they are gonna get $106,000 in subsidy. So they get regular subsidy every year, happens to be about $106,000, that comes to them, that's not part of this budget process. So that's the normal subsidy that we know is coming. This is an additional $106,000. You'll note that it's nowhere near the number that they took out of the ED 279. I don't know where the rest of that money went. Some other schools got it, I don't know. It went into the big pot of the ED 279 money and got shifted around. The reason those numbers are different is because they're based on two different data sets. The data we provide for the ED 279 is the EFEM
34.
form, blah, 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 that is submitted. And then the number that 106,000 is based on is a different set of data that adult ed's directors submit directly to the adult ed office of the DOE. And so there's different rules about what those numbers are. So they're not counting the numbers we used anymore to get us that $590,000. So, it's complicated, I'm gonna do my best. We have always provided within the budget the $63,880. That number's been the same since I've been here. I think we haven't increased that. Last year we increased the local assessment. We added $25,000 to what we were gonna give adult ed because they were struggling to meet their budget. But this number hasn't changed. Gabby and I consulted with the adult ed director for Lewis and Auburn and learned more that if we, instead of having more in that local assessment, if we had more in the budget line, that it would improve our potential for getting more subsidy from the state. Is that basically right? Great, awesome. So we decided to increase that number within the budget. So there's a line, it'll say like funding for 16 to 20-year-olds. It's in regular instruction.
No. It's in other expenses, it's its own warrant altogether.
Oh, it's its own warrant? Okay, great. So 63,880, it's gonna be 88,880, right? But what we did was we reduced the local assessment. Last year, it was $201,000. This year, we reduced it to $117,000. Just see it on the revenue sheet. So overall, it's a reduction in the budget of $58,000. I will just say that the adult ed directors are not happy with this change either. And for us, because not all of that money went to adult ed, it is a significant decrease in subsidy for us. So, we were supposed to get more than $1 million. We didn't. So, we ended up reducing the budget by $58,000, so it could have been worse, but that's where we are. So, things we don't know. Actual insurance, we won't know late March, early April. I think the first number we get is like statewide, what's the increase? And then the next time we'll know, well, what's the least and what's the highest? Which oftentimes that's useless information. Unless the highest is below 15%, then we'll know. So we'll get our actual number last week of March, first week of April. We also are in negotiations, so that's also an unknown piece. Okay, and then you're gonna have information in here about the special education pre-K, and I'm just gonna say it once again, I know you guys know this, and that is not reflected in the budget. However, what is reflected in the budget is some reductions in some of the staff that are in the budget because they are providing services to those children. So when they're providing services to those children, it gets paid out of that pre-K fund. So we now have a pretty good sense, because Rebecca and her team keep spreadsheets and how much time they're spending, and they bill it to the DOE, so we know we've been able to reduce some positions. So there was some savings in the special education warrant article because some of those staff is now split between those two pots of money.
Has there been any talk that they're gonna take that away from us?
Not yet. But they didn't tell us about the adult ed either before, so. But I think this one's much more significant. I mean, we are looking at substantially increasing the staffing that we have. We do not have appropriate staffing for this program. We are gonna get to the end, but we're not doing everything we're supposed to be doing. So you'll see in there the proposals of adding staff, but again, all of that staff is on that separate DOE funding.
What is, it might be in here, but what is, how much, if we had to pay for that, what are we looking at?
For the total amount that we are budgeted for next year under that funding?
That we're getting from the DOE right now?
800,000?
Yeah, it's about $850,000 that we are anticipating
So
spending
by,
next year.
well, but in a year, plan on about $1 million.
Don't be so negative, Peter.
As I have
You swear to
explained
me
to
you're
the
an
superintendent, I am an optimist,
Yeah,
Are you?
and I am.
I know.
I beg to differ.
Right?
Because I am
say
like
the same thing.
very, very pessimistic myself, so it takes one to know one.
But anyway, so if all of a sudden the state decides, well, this falls under your normal
I
special
mean, I assume
education.
the ED 279 would reflect that, but just like special education, it's not gonna reflect the true cost of it. Yeah,
So,
yeah. So, but Rebecca's got it right up in there, you'll be able to see, you know, and we'll talk a little bit about, we'll be able to see what we're planning for staffing for next year. But it's a lot more than what we've got now.
but right now, that's all under the state's
Yep.
budget, not ours.
Yep. So, this is summary, this chart is in your book, but you can see the percentage increases. So, some of the percentage increases are huge, but the money amount's not great, not huge. So, regular instruction, that's our biggest warrant article, 4.66%. Like, I just feel like we've really worked hard to keep these. Remember, special ed last year was 15%. We're down to 9% increase. So it's still an increase, not our ideal. We've got kids who need services, so that's the situation we're in. That increases CTE, it's $5,000, even though it's 62%. The other instruction, you see that, I pointed that out to you, the largest reason for that increase, almost half that increase is the contracted transportation. Student staff support is at 2.97%. That is nurse, guidance, technology, system admin. About half of that is audit increase and insurance. The audit increase is 17,500, insurance is 25, can't remember.
I can't remember, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
off the top of my
So,
head. I don't know.
those two things. School admin is up 4.37, so that's all the staff within all the offices and everything that happens within there. In some cases, it's a need for increased translation services for families that need translation services. Transportation is up 9, almost 10%. Facilities, only 2.9. We have gotten much better at anticipating projects that we think make sense for a reserve account. So we'll make recommendations on reserve account and funding that. And then this is the adult education that you'll see is up 88,000, but again, there's a reduction in the local assessment, so it ends up being a savings.
The wastewater treatment doesn't fall under debt?
No, it's in facilities.
Debt is only for construction.
I'm pretty sure I
This
saw
isn't-
them build a big
You're
hole.
100% right, but it doesn't fall into that category.
Okay.
That's the state's rules.
State has weird.
So this, I always provide this to you so you can sort of see where money's going, and we continue to put our money where kids are. So regular instruction is the biggest piece, special ed is the next biggest piece. This is CTE, tiny piece of the pie. Other instruction, athletics, co-curriculars. Student and staff support, that's all in schools. School administration is here. And then you see system admin, which is central office, this tiny little piece, and then facilities and transportation. So just where we're putting our money. And we continue to have 80% of our budget is people. So those numbers have remained pretty steady in terms of where we're putting our money. So,
If you look at that real quick in the labeling of it,
yeah,
we don't really care much about our nutrition apparently.
nutrition adult. I had to do it so you could actually see it, because it just said nutrition, and I'm like, we don't put any money into food service. So.
I know, but I just, as you look at that.
Yeah. Okay, so I keep trying 100 ways to like provide some visual to understand sort of the impact of the budget on local taxes, right? So I think when we did this analysis, Anthony, I had a chart in there that you really liked that had a different line for each revenue line. So I'm trying a different visual, so we'll see how this goes. So these are the 3 pots of money that we have, the major pot, like there's other smaller pots of money, but this is where our big money comes from. This blue, but down here is our state subsidy. That's the amount of money that they provide for us from the ED 279. This middle one on my chart is light green, it's light green here. This is the required local contribution that also is part of the ED 279. The dark green is the local, additional local. So this is when these 2 pots of money don't fund our schools, this is the pot of money that we need to access. So what I find interesting about this is you can basically see these 2 pots of money kind of grow together. And in fact, this one's grown pretty substantially. This one, I mean, back in 2019, it was 8.1 million was the required local. It's now at 9.4 million, and that is all valuation, 9.5 million. That is all valuation. That is how that is determined. This one, however, in 2019 is 4.5 million, and in this budget we're looking at 8 million. So this is, I'll go back to my original commentary around EPS and what's essential. So we haven't really added a bunch of people to our budget. We kind of have a similar staffing model. We've changed what staff is doing and how many of one we need and reduced in another. Last year we reduced 21 positions. And yet, and the state has given us more money. But like now, this year, the subsidy that we're getting, the increase is $1 million, and all that's going to help us pay for is health insurance, assuming that health insurance comes in at the $1 million. So that is our fundamental challenge, and that's everybody's fundamental challenge with school budget, because this part is the part we go to when we can't connect the dots between these 2 pots of money. This one seems to be widening the most, growing the most. So, helpful, not helpful, I thought I'd just provide it as information. Okay, Gabby, revenue.
Oh, that's a nice big screen.
I'm gonna make it bigger, calm down.
All right, so what this shows you, part of it close. Yeah. So what this shows you is the fiscal year 27 projected revenues, and it compares it to fiscal year 26 that we're presently in, those revenues that we assessed for our current fiscal year. The interest that we're earning right now is significantly higher than it was. We have a healthy fund balance, which is what the auditors told us, which is good because that helps us if we do not receive our EPS allocations timely, if we don't get the assessments timely, if our grant payments, our reimbursements for spent money on grants don't come timely. That helps us get there. So I've increased that, we've doubled that right now because we expect it to stay consistent, but we have been spending down a lot of those funds on improvements through our facilities. We spent close to $400,000 on replacing Lee's roof. We spent close to $100,000 on repairing the elevator at the high school. We've spent a number of other funds for other projects. We also have $400,000 earmarked for the wastewater treatment plant. And then we're also going to discuss some other items that we feel there would be good use for reserve funds. The gas tax refund is based on the amount of gallons of unleaded gas we purchase at Jimmy's and Fuelette that we have accounts with. We get 30 cents back per gallon. I think it's 30 cents back per gallon for every gallon purchased. We have all those receipts, we have to submit those to the state, and then they eventually refund us. The state agency client tuition has decreased significantly, which is good for the students. That means that there are less students presently under the state's purview. They've been adopted. Fantastic. But it also means less revenue for the district. The efficiency main rebates, that was something that we got in our current fiscal year. That is not something that we'll see again anytime soon anyway, unless we take up other projects. And then there's miscellaneous revenue, which can include refunds from previous year workers' compensation premiums. It can be the sale of MacBooks, potentially. It can also be, I can't think of anything else. FOA payments, potentially, as well.
That's awesome. Let's grow that revenue source.
Carryover funds from prior year. So this year we did $555,000, which is what it has been for several years since Carrie and I have been here. So we feel that it's a good idea to increase that to $600,000, which is actually an 8% increase. It's strange how it shows it's the 1.4%, I think, 1.5%, or maybe that's below. And then Carrie's already talked about the state subsidy, the local assessment, that's the required match, and then the additional local to be able to make our budget work. Way down the bottom here, that's where we've reduced it. That last year, or our current year, it was the $201,000, and we've reduced it to $117,000. And that's to make the adult ed program whole. Typically what we would do is we would have the adult ed program cover any deficits from their student activity account or enrichment funds. But with the shift in how the funding went, we were able to still reduce that and make that program whole. Did I forget anything? Do you want to talk about this number over here?
I think you've been talking.
I don't want to talk about this number.
So, go ahead. You go.
So even though it's a 6.13% increase to the budget overall, that correlates to the towns of a total of 7.39%. Broken down 9.93, 8.03, and 5.41 to Turner. I think Turner's the lower one this year, whereas usually it's the higher one.
Green's valuation changed the most.
It did.
And that's why theirs is up the highest.
Then we also have the mill rates in there. That is not something that we determine. What a mill will raise is provided to us by the towns. Leeds did not have the number available for upcoming years, so this is last year's. But Green and Turner have provided that. So this is showing you approximately, if your home is valued at $100,000, this is the increase you can potentially expect. Again, this is not something that the district controls at all. This comes from the towns. We are just giving you that information so that you can see it.
And you know, towns have other source of revenue, they may not have to charge this amount. We just, it's unknown. I'm just saying.
They should definitely be able to cover it, right?
What's that?
Nice feet.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, so just a reminder for everybody that we do have a website with all this information, all the information that we provided tonight. The current budget book is in there now. All the dates and timelines for the budget process are there. And each week, as we provide updates to the budget, we'll update what's available here. That's where we are. Okay.
Anybody have any questions? And yes, the audience, if you have a question, feel free. No?
Oh, okay. I was like, no, you said no. You get to decide. You get to decide.
I got one question, Gary.
Yeah.
Just, we were talking about sports population a little bit, high track population. We're starting up lacrosse. I was actually wondering if we know this or not, but are we going to reduce some track numbers because they're moving to lacrosse, Or are we adding all new athletes with the lacrosse program, or some kind of a mix?
I don't know if we know that yet. So I know we kept track last year. I'm not confident. How do you feel about the TMS numbers, Jana?
I'm expecting we're gonna have to make cuts to, like, do tryouts for first, 7th, and 8th grade baseball and softball. Our hope is that by adding lacrosse, students might have an alternative option to be able to participate, and our track numbers run around 50 to 60 kids. I mean, we've never had to make cuts for track, and we're kids.
No, nobody cuts track.
No pun
Right.
intended.
Our biggest issue is busing. If we have more kids per track than fit on one bus, we have to double the cost of transportation. So those are the, like, the kids.
I mean, I guess we're adding, I don't know how many lacrosse, participants.
Spots, yeah.
Is that a net gain in
Yes.
athletes?
Are there gonna be
Or-
more
or is
kids
it-
participating?
Or are we
Yeah.
pulling from other pots?
There was a drop at the high school in baseball over the last couple of years, but that was before lacrosse. But the current group that we sent up, that are freshmen this year for this year's baseball, and the incoming classes, like, it's not gonna be an issue.
So
Well,
we are
it's like,
curious about that. I don't think we know yet.
Okay.
Sign
But
up
I
isn't
mean,
for another,
What I will say is Evan, sorry, I'm putting this away so I don't forget. Evan needed this position in track last year, so this is not new, and, but I think, if the numbers drop, then we'll cut the stipend, right? If they go down to 75 kids, then they don't need the additional spot.
Sure.
But we are tracking to see if we can figure out, are we in fact pulling more kids in? And not just recycling the ones who are already doing something.
Sure.
Yep.
anybody else have any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much.